Episode 58 of Minor Disturbance Radio. I'm Brian Minor, and of course with me is Travis Williams over here.
Good evening.
This is going to be an extra special podcast this time because I have on the phone with us Bruce Kulick, who obviously all my listeners know that I'm a huge Kiss fan, and we'll get over that right now. I want to thank Bruce for giving me the time. Bruce, you there?
Yes, I am. How's it going, guys?
Hey, buddy. I just want to thank you real fast for giving us your time. I just want to say one thing real quick, though. When I heard that you were going to be on the podcast, one of the first things that I did was I called some of my friends and asked them for, advice. I don't want to mess this thing up, so I just wanted to see what they thought. And they all said the same thing. They said, make sure you have all your Kiss dates right and your dates and etc., all that stuff. And as you know, Kiss fans can be like Trekkies, right? So I'm not going to put you through that because this podcast is not a Kiss podcast. It's a human experience podcast more than anything, Bruce. And I want you to be comfortable with that because I want to talk to Bruce Kulick. I want to talk to the kid that sat in his room and listened to records and dreamed of what we all dream of, right? Which is being a rock star, and your experience with that. So I think that Bruce Kulick is bigger than just one stop on your journey.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't take the Kiss out of me, but it's not. It doesn't completely define me. You know what I'm saying? So,
exactly. I wouldn't take that from you. I mean, obviously, I know you because of Kiss, because I'm a huge Kiss fan. So
no, and I celebrate it. I do, but I know it's the top of the resume. But there's many proud moments in my entire career. But I know that most people, they're very much fascinated with my contributions to that band because it's such a huge group. As long as you don't ask me what makeup character did I wear, you're okay.
Yeah, I think you've been asked that enough, Bruce. But I would like to know, what really interests me is you grew up, obviously your brother's Bob Kulick.
Yep. And
all the Kiss fans know that Bob did a lot of Ghost playing on some Kiss tracks.
Yes.
Now, and I know that he probably had to sign a confidentiality thing when he was younger, but were you around famous people when you were young? Is that how you grew up?
Well, not really at all, but actually Paul and Gene were probably, especially Paul Stanley was like probably the most famous person that I met. Bob and I actually earlier years, we played together with Meatloaf, so on occasion we met other people, and then even just prior to that, I backed up a disco artist named George McRae who had a hit called "Rock Your Baby." You still hear that song sometimes shopping in the grocery store, And I did it just for the gig. I mean, you got to remember in '75, disco and that kind of music was very popular, And I remember there was a short American tour after I was in Europe for nearly 3 months touring with George, and we needed a second guitarist, and Bob wasn't doing anything, and even though he already had played with a couple of cool people, he agreed to come on the tour with us. And I remember we were up in Toronto playing, and Lou Reed walks into the club in Toronto and all of a sudden strikes up a conversation with us. And years later, Bob actually played on a Lou Reed album.
Oh, wow.
Was I starstruck when I met people like when Todd Rundgren sat in with Meatloaf because he, I love Todd Rundgren and he produced that album. So I was exposed. You got to remember, if you're ever playing in a band that has some sort of visibility and fame, you will meet other people that are famous. Okay,
absolutely.
But really, more connected to your question would be me actually as a person, if you get what I mean. Driving, I got the driver's license before my brother because he used to travel a lot, and then he used to just take the train into New York. And I actually had a car because I just liked to tool around Queens a bit where we grew up. But I would drive us into the city, and he'd be friends with Paul, and Paul kept his friends kind of a small circle, just people he trusted. This is during the, I'd say 77, 78.
Yeah.
And I remember that we'd meet Paul somewhere or go to a movie with him or go to a club where Paul could be comfortable, and at the same time, I'm exposed to someone like that being like who I'm invited out with. That really was exciting. Although, again, I didn't see that, how y'all doing, Paul? I didn't see him,
Right.
It was much more a very relaxed guy who in Manhattan enjoying a movie or going to a club or whatever. So I did get to experience some people. You got to remember, if you grow up in New York and you're on the scene and you do know, and you work with some noted bands, you're going to meet some people, and you'd be surprised how normal they are sometimes. I remember being over at a friend of ours' home in Lower Manhattan. He lived in like Gramercy Park, and this guy knew a lot of guitarists. He was a guitar collector and dealer, and all of a sudden Mick Ronson comes over to the house, and that was crazy.
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with the guy, listening to like Hendrix bootlegs. And,
so that would be
Ian Hunter would come by, and I'd be like,
nice.
"What the hell is going on here?" You get what I'm saying.
And so not to interrupt you, Bruce, but in that era of New York music scene history, there was really a lot of the British blues boom music scene that was kind of taking up residence in New York at the time.
Absolutely.
And so like the Who would have been there, the Stones would have been around, probably the Beatles, at least John Lennon would have been hanging out.
Unfortunately, I never met him, but all you do is go shopping on 48th Street at Manny's, and I remember Keith Moon hearing me try out a Marshall amp, that I wound up buying, what I mean? And he was like, kind of like, oh, it's a little loud. And I'm thinking, like, the Who isn't loud?
Exactly.
I see Leslie West in a full-on Afghan coat buying a guitar.
I was going to ask you about Leslie West, because I know that he came in and did some playing for the Who around that time, and there was rumors that there was some of that kind of going on with Kiss and whatnot, that were floating around, just because there were a number of cats that were well known that were good guitar players. Could come in.
New York was a real great spot to grow up. I mean, later on, it seemed like bands would come out of anywhere just about.
Yeah.
There almost became like an anti-New York thing with the independent labels and bands more from Seattle or Austin or, whatever. But there's no doubt with the record industry the way it used to be, New York was a mecca. LA's always been exciting. I mean, I could run into, of course, not only musicians, but famous movie stars. I mean, I nearly ran over Michael Jackson years ago.
Oh my goodness!
He was returning, videos to Tower Records.
Wow!
Okay? Wouldn't that just be your luck
there was
too?
a Tower Video across the street.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be your luck, Bruce? To you were in Kiss, and then you were the guy that ran over Michael Jackson too.
Yeah, that would have been a nice footnote on my
Which
career.
one would make you more famous? Do you think?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not sure really. That would have been big problems, but most of these people seem to wind up doing something crazy on their own without someone killing them. And then there's these crazy people who obviously, I remember being in New York when Lennon got shot. Oh. Even though there's conspiracies about that too.
Sure.
About everything.
But New York, I was really blessed to grow up in New York, have a older brother, not very much older, but older, so he could be exposed to certain things and then share that with me, if you follow what I mean.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated with all of it. And you got to remember, back then, that you don't share the information the way we would now, where you just look it up or go online and watch a YouTube or whatever. Nothing like that existed. So it was anything that you got served, a new inversion for a guitar chord that he picked up in England, my brother, and I'm like, wow, I love it. And all you had is your record shop maybe to go to and say, I've heard of Black Sabbath. Let me check this out. You get what I mean. So exciting times, and it's no kind of surprise to me, even though the magic of Kiss being formed in New York with those four particular guys, and then getting Eric Carr, who was also from the New York area, and then even Vinnie Vincent, who was from like Connecticut or something.
Oh, really?
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I walk in, and by the time Eric Singer, was there, by then the band was in L.A. So there's a guy from Cleveland that happened to have been in L.A.
Yeah.
So where you are, and I know you guys are in Iowa, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my brother-in-law is there, and that's pretty. I guess you call him my brother-in-law, right?
Yeah. Mark Weigler.
And he's a fine guitarist, Mark. And
really
it's kind of ironic that I found a photo of me playing his Gold Top at that kind of charity thing that I wound up popping into years ago. I put it on Facebook. I think it was this morning, just on my personal page. I think just saying like, "Hey, anybody know what this is and why?" Nobody got it. I could have offered $100,000. Nobody would have figured it out except for Mark. But I gave it up and mentioned that it was that. But anyway, Mark, being in Iowa, nowadays you got the best band in Iowa, and the right person hears you, and whatever. Even though the industry is terrible right now, but you get what I'm saying. New York and LA for me were very important.
Right.
And I would run into famous people, but, everyone, I always treated everyone with respect and tremendous. I learned one thing, and then we should move on from that. I remember meeting, and I wish I could find that photo, and I think it got lost, but I actually took a picture of Brian May, because he came to see me when I was working with one of the disco bands. We were in a club in Chicago, and him and Roger Taylor came in. Roger had a bit of he was a little, I'm a rock star, leave me alone kind of vibe. But Brian was, Brian May is a total sweet man, and a very, not only a brilliant musician, but very bright and everything. With
brilliant scientist.
With his astronomy and everything, right? But, there I was playing the Strat and just playing that kind of top 40 disco music with I think that gig was with Andrea True, the one that did More.
Yeah.
I liked it, that one.
Yeah.
But, he was really cool to me, as if I was in some rock band. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
But I will be honest that I think most people, even if they saw me in a kind of disco or a top 40 thing, I'd always get like once in a while a comment from someone, or in this case, he showed me the respect of a rock guitarist. I always got like, oh, you're going to be in a big band one day. I mean, I loved hearing it, but it wasn't why I played guitar in bands. I played guitar because I just didn't know what else to do, and people seem to enjoy it whenever I played it. You know what I mean? So that's what I did.
So
Bruce, other people, they'll pose in a mirror and they'll figure out the best way to do what they got to do, and I just kind of kept playing because it seemed to be a fun thing to do.
Well, there has to be something that you went through as far as stylists and stuff when you were with Kiss, because I just got done watching the Who Wants to Be Lonely video just for fun, it's just such a weird thing to look back that far and how that style and that look kind of hit, but I didn't think it was crazy looking until I was 43 years old looking back at it now,
Yeah.
Right. Well, now there's a lot of, and I love it that everybody's looking back to 30 years and discovering, look, I meet a lot of fans, and a lot of fans that reach out to me, through Facebook or Twitter, the internet, my era means a lot to them, and they maybe even got into Kiss with no makeup during my era compared to the Kiss with makeup. So, the album Asylum, I was very fortunate to go to Sweden for a Kiss Expo that was very much more about Asylum and Crazy Nights than anything else. Even though a Kiss Expo could be about all things Kiss, of course. And I was fortunate enough that I could fit it in my schedule to be the guest, and I had a blast. I tell you, the stories and the slideshow that the guy who presented it, I covered a little bit on my Facebook. It was pretty remarkable. But Sweden, they were crazy for it. There was a guy who had a lot of the outfits from that era.
Wow.
And they were talking more about the tour and less about the videos. Although, and he did interview me a little bit about the videos that were done. But
well, I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you a couple questions about the videos too.
That's cool. But there seems to be, now that it's 30 years on, it seems like, wow, this is, and the clothing, like when you said get a stylist and all that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I walked into Kiss. Meatloaf, I was like one of 9 people on stage. I wasn't supposed to be like up front rocking out. I played the right stuff, and it worked. Then I had a band with Michael Bolton. Yeah, we were trying to be more like a Bad Company Zeppelin thing, and we did our thing, and it didn't happen. And then I, kind of laid low a bit, played with the Good Rats in the tri-state area of New York, and they were kind of an odd band, but my shtick was more like play the guitar well. I didn't have that Kiss thing where I'm going to be running around and putting on a show. Okay.
Much less Twisted Sister.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, fortunately, I wound up in the non-makeup Kiss, but they were still always, because Gene and Paul know the entertainment value and how important that is. They were always over the top. And, people joked about me being Spruce Bruce because I was petrified to run around like them, because I would not have been able to play the guitar well if I did that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't have. And someone had to hold down the guitar. Paul stick the guitar neck under his leg, and
and I'm the guy in the audience that's listening for that. I'm trying to actually hear what Paul's doing.
Right.
Yeah, and that's not a D.
He's not going to be necessarily as loud, but I mean, he's performing, and there's very few people that can perform as well as that. Okay.
Yeah.
So the truth is, you get this situation where there's no way I could perform like them. But in time, of course, they really helped me. They kind of very much got involved with how I should present myself on stage, and I was very grateful about that. From the clothes to the when to make a move, and how to not get in their way too. So I learned how to become a KISS member and be one of the wheels on the car, if you get what I mean. But I wasn't driving. You get what I'm saying?
I hear you.
I wasn't in the front, and for that I'm very grateful. And I do know how to perform even in a Grand Funk or a situation if I sit in with Mark's band or something, But I'm not, depending on the situation, I'm going to do what's important,
Well, Bruce, my question about the videos is actually pretty silly, but I thought maybe you'd get a kick out of it only because as a guitar player, you understand that you can't submerge a guitar in water.
Oh, I know. That petrified me. I did, though. It literally was in water.
Well, you soaked two guitars. You soaked a Charvel and another.
I know.
Video.
And you know what? Nothing bad happened to either one of them.
Really?
It's kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
Well, except for the fact that the Charvel got stolen at the KISS warehouse, but the other one, I eventually, years later, sold it. And I think I know. I think it's now in Sweden with this guy who has some of the outfits, oddly enough. I regret selling some of the instruments years ago, but at the time, I just wanted to keep my favorite ones, and I didn't realize some I wound up at the Hard Rock, which is great because they get to be, kind of shown off, to the people. The chain is pretty healthy and fun to go there. But, I allowed that guitar to get wet. It was a one-take thing, and then it dried off, and nothing bad. I wasn't plugged into an amp,
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Right.
But I just wondered if you submerged that thing, if you just kind of threw it in the trash and got a...
No.
I was assuming you had like...
I kept it. No, it didn't damage it.
I was assuming you had like 4 or 5 of them. You know what I mean?
No, I know what you're saying. No, I can't even believe it. And if you ask me to do it now, I tell you that. No freaking way.
No underwater amp, huh?
Yeah. Hey, Bruce.
Exactly.
Bruce, real quick, when you came into KISS, did you use your own gear, or did they then make you change because of any endorsements, or did you bring your...
That's a really good question. At the time, I probably owned a few guitars, okay? Actually, I needed to get gear. I really came in like with nothing. Where it was, I ran to Sam Ash and bought a Charvel, which was kind of popular then. You needed a Floyd Rose,
pointy headstock.
And then actually, KISS gave me money to get a spare because I really only would need 2 guitars on the 6 weeks in Europe. Okay, and I picked out I think it was this beautiful gold top, and I think at some point right before then I found a black BC Rich Eagle. I didn't take that to Europe, but I started using that for the U.S. tour. So those were my main kind of 3 guitars then. They had Marshalls. I really didn't own enough amps to say, let me use this. I had no real, endorsement thing. That came later by being in KISS, so that was actually really a good thing, because I came in kind of clean with like, okay, I could use your amps, great. Oh, okay, I'll buy this, and then you'll buy me the spare, great. You see what I mean?
And you used Marshalls then when you came into the band?
Yeah, KISS had a lot of Marshalls. I mean, they had a ton of.
And what era?
A huge warehouse of them.
What era of Marshalls would these have been? JCM 800s,
I think when I joined,
JMPs?
They were later 70s or early 80s. They weren't the 800 series, but they were either later 70s, but they were modified. Okay.
Oh.
They already realized that, oh my God, to make this thing, really, really be crunchy, it would need to be super loud. So they were modified.
I see.
I was just in a studio recently that I got to play through 4 different Marshalls with different tubes in them, and I got to tell you, I just can't get on the Marshall train. There's something about there's straight amps, nothing out, no outboard gear at all, just guitar. I had a Les Paul, put it right into the Marshall, and twiddled with it, and I just couldn't get on top of it.
You're playing through the wrong Marshalls, Brian.
Well, look. Just to get into gear just for a moment, I mean, I didn't really care for the 70s very, very loud ones, even though Hendrix made, incredible music through amps like that. But he used the right pedals with the right guitar, and the guy was brilliant. He could make a toilet seat sing. But when it came to the people were modding amps for that gain, and then then some of the 800 series represented that, although I never really owned one. But as soon as the 900 series started for Marshall, and the same thing with 2000 series, those all had that built-in, preamp and master gain kind of thing. And by then, again, you got to know how to use it. You got to have the right instrument with it. But anytime you see anything with me in the past, 10 to 15, all the years with Grand Funk, it's a 900 series Marshall.
Awesome.
And I know how to make it work. With or without a pedal, I can make it work. But look, that's a personal thing. So Brian, you're okay to say you don't like Marshall. I get it.
Well, I played through the Soldano SLOs, and there's the 1996 ones that are super good. The snakeskin ones.
Anyway, snakeskin.
Karabi had one of those SLOs, and we used it a little bit for recording on some things for Union, that band. But I remember when he wanted to sell it, I didn't want it. But somebody else did. And they're supposed to be, pretty popular too. So, but I'm still a Marshall guy. What's great is that I could tour anywhere. Ask them to get the back line, get me a 900 or a 2000 series head. There's a few of the other models I'm good with, but I can make them work. So.
Yeah. I think after a certain point in Marshall's history, they just started producing a more consistent product. You start getting back into the 70s. Well, if you stay within the
series, they'll usually be very consistent. Yeah. But then they keep, like every company and every car company
changing circuits
and sneaker company, they seem to keep changing things.
These shoes no longer fit.
No, or it's like, wait a minute, it's the same model. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah,
that's because one was made in one country.
Right.
The other one was, although it has the same model number, and you're going, that's part of my pet peeves in life. Okay.
Well, now they're getting the Transformers from China, and they're using different core materials, and but all those transducers matter, what the tubes are, what the Transformers are, all that.
I just did a session where I'm sorry, it wasn't a session. It was that gig at LA Kiss, where I sat in with the house band and I did the Star Spangled Banner, and I didn't want to take my main Kiss head. It said Kiss on it. I didn't really want anyone to see that, but I have another head, 900 series head also. That other one was like a SLX head. This one was a 900. I remember it originally probably didn't come with EL34s, which is one of the popular tubes that people like.
Right. This would have been like a 5881.
5881s, right. But this one, I know I had a guy put in the EL34s. And I tell you, when I plugged it in, the other guitar player that's in the house band, who's a terrific guy and an amazing guitarist, Monty Pittman, he plays with Madonna. Although I think he can play with anybody, but he's got he's got a pretty cushy gig. He teaches her guitar too, which is not a bad thing to do.
He plays with Madonna. That means he can play with anybody.
Too. He's great. As soon as I plugged in and started, this is that sound check before we were going to go over a couple of numbers before the arena was open to the public. He goes, looks at the amp, and I borrowed his orange cabinet, because this way I didn't have to drive to Anaheim with a cabinet in my car. He already had somebody with cartage.
That's a different
And he was just like, oh my God, that amp sounds amazing. And I think I know what he thought the 900 might sound like, but that amp did sound amazing.
Yeah.
So you're right. Tubes can make a difference.
Yeah, you showed up with that. You showed up with that orange cab too, which a lot of those don't have Celestion speakers in them. They've got these other kind of custom design. I
think I asked them what was in it, and they were probably the vintage 30s or something equivalent, which is also my go-to speaker.
I dig them. And those orange cabinets? They're slightly oversized and they weigh about twice what a Marshall cabinet does. They're super heavy. Yeah. So they boom out real different. But I mean. What kind of?
I sometimes do a session with just a 112. I have like this VHT.
Awesome.
It's a small company.
Yeah.
I got it cheap. It has a vintage 30 in it. Sounds great. Nobody would know I'm not playing through a half stack or a stack.
They never know.
If you're recording and it's just the microphone on the speaker.
Close mic. Yeah, VHT. They make the 2150 power amp, which I dig. But not to totally nerd out here, guys. But
we're nerding out on gear.
No, I had some listeners write me and they told me, hey, when Travis starts to nerd out about gear, let him go because some of that's pretty cool.
Sorry, Bruce.
Yeah. But then the other one,
no problem.
Then some other people are like, shut him up.
Annoying.
Well,
the gear people would like it, but the other people are going like, what the hell are they talking about?
So that's 1% of the audience versus about 99%.
Yeah, there are some females that listen to our show who probably went to the kitchen to make nachos.
Let's talk about the girls.
Well,
what would the girls like to know? What were their questions?
Well, so I guess what I'm interested in, Bruce, is talking to you about what you were like maybe before you were introduced to being in a band, on tour, writing records, into that business. I mean, did you ever have like a real job when you were younger, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty fortunate that playing music and performing has been such a big part of my entire life. But my first job, because I needed to save up, I came from a really lower middle class family, so it wasn't like, "Mom, I want a Marshall stack." "Oh, here you go, kid." It was nothing like that. Okay, so even just to buy a used SG at the time in 1973 or so, it was really hard, you know what I mean? And you had to, couldn't buy a new one, you had to find a used one. But, you can always make things work. But I wanted to save up for a Marshall, and I wanted to grow my hair. My mom didn't want to give me the allowance anymore, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, I had a part-time job after school. I would go into the city, and I actually worked at the public library, the really big one on Fifth Avenue that has the big lions outside.
Oh.
And the whole point of that was, what I did there was it was actually a reference library, meaning people came there, it looks like one of those university libraries. It's really intense. And people would come and they'd fill out a card because they knew there was an astronomy book or a book on. I worked in the science and technology division. And I'll be honest, one time Kurt Vonnegut was there. He was doing some research.
Right.
It was really weird. And then you had to go down all these creepy long hallways and go find that particular book. Everything was done on index cards. It was a very odd job, and I'll never forget it. It was pretty weird. I probably did it for a year or two, but I used to get,
Is that the Dewey system?
The Dewey Decimal
System?
The
Dewey Decimal
really
System?
Primitive,
Yeah, I remember that.
There was no air conditioning in the building because it was an old, marble, it was built many, many years ago. And I remember when the temperature and the humidity in New York got up to a certain level, we'd get over, like special pay.
Yeah.
And just crazy stuff like that.
Weird.
And I remember the secret room that, I think it was room 109, and that's where they kept kind of stuff that you had to really you had to leave ID or something to access it.
Did you touch on the Grand Funk show coming up in Des Moines at the Arts Festival?
We haven't talked about it.
On Saturday, June 25th?
Iowa is such a interesting, not only because I have family there, and it seems to be such a great place for rock and roll, and Grand Funk's played many times in Iowa. A couple of times the weather didn't agree and we didn't play. you know how all hell can break loose with these storms that you get during the summer and all, but I think it's some sort of arts festival, right, Brian?
Yeah, that's what it says. It says it is the Des Moines Arts Festival. So
right.
Did you say Des Moines?
I did.
Are you
I'm from Iowa. I can do that because I'm from Iowa.
Jesus.
So.
I don't say it that way.
Yeah.
But we're looking forward to that date.
Des Moines.
Bruce
Des Moines.
just ripped on you, dude.
Yeah, I know. That happens to me all the time.
I don't have much of the details yet because that's 2 weeks away. The next gig we got is in California, in San Diego, one of the fairs out here, which is always a lot of fun. But I think that one looks really interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. I know Max has got some family coming out, and I'm still hoping that some of my in-laws will be able to make it to that gig. But it should be a lot of fun. The band always, no matter where we play, we always get a great reaction from the crowd, and they seem to be those kind of events, just like this one that we did in Tennessee last weekend, seem to be very, it's a crowd of all ages, and they want to have a good time. I mean, let's face it, the world's becoming more and more complicated and crazy and scary, so that when people get together for a good time, they really do want to have a good time.
Yeah, we need it.
That's what I'm hoping to do.
We need it.
That's awesome.
Some lovely, people from Iowa. And Des Moines is a great city anyway, so.
I wanted to, something that really fascinates me about the business, because obviously that we're just small town boys that have always dreamed of doing what you do, and sometimes the behind the scenes stuff is just so fascinating to us. And for me, I started going back on the KISS records that you were on, and I looked at the songwriting credits, and I saw that you had some credits on certain tunes like King of the Mountain. But I looked further on there, and I believe Desmond Child was also a writer on that. Can you tell me, how does that go to where, did you bring a riff and then you take it to Paul and then you guys both go to Desmond? How does that work? How does that work for Desmond to be a songwriter for?
Well, quite honestly, writing songs with them was a bit of a challenge because they both had their way of approaching music. Basically, my biggest challenge, to be honest, was if I had a good idea that I thought was like, ooh, I think Gene would really like this. If Gene didn't like it, or I couldn't get anywhere with Gene, I really couldn't give it to Paul after that, and vice versa.
Right.
So that made a real challenge to try to figure out, what would be the best way to, it's such a score, not only financially, just what a rush to know you co-write a song on a Kiss album. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So in those ways, it's quite interesting to accomplish it, but it's so hard. It just is.
Explain to me, like I said, did you come in with a riff, or how does the initial core of the song start? It
all depended. There were many times, of course, where if Paul said, "Hey, let's work on something. Let's try to write something," it wouldn't. Even if I had an idea, I'd make it look like I'm just jamming it with him, or I would rather see what he's got and see if I can make it shine and add something to it, so I'm bringing value to it, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So there was no rule, let me tell you that.
Yeah.
And sometimes a song could just happen where I had a title like Come Hell or High Water, and I start to write something, practically wrote all the music, and then presented to Gene, and then he just finishes the lyrics. You see what I mean? So
yeah.
It all mattered. There was like so many different kind of different approaches to how it all started,
Well, Desmond Child was an interesting character in that. Did you sit and actually write with him in the same room?
Yeah, during Asylum, Desmond and Paul already had some success, and they got to work together, and the whole vibe was. I remember going over to Paul's house and working with Desmond and him on a couple of songs that did actually wind up on Asylum. So that was really, really exciting to me, because I knew that Desmond was a real, a famous writer.
Well, I have a question about Desmond Child, because I'll admit I'm on the outside looking in here. What instrument does Desmond himself prefer to use when he writes? Is he a pianist or a guitarist?
Don't know. I think he was more of a keyboard player than not, but I don't really know.
Okay. Okay.
I think from the books that I've read, I think Paul said that he sat with a piano a lot of times.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but I bet he was more keyboard based, because he was always like very. I know he was great with melody and lyric ideas, and I doubt if he really I don't even know if he played guitar. You know what I mean? I don't remember seeing him play guitar.
Well, I know that I looked at his catalog, and wow, he has such a diverse. I mean, he's written. If it was a hit from the 80s or even 90s, he probably had a hand in it. I mean, he wrote everything from "Living on a Prayer" to Cisco's Thong Song. You know,
really? Yeah. That's just crazy. That's a wide palette. But you can tell. I think you can usually tell the keyboard songwriters, because they seem to have very little or no concern for open strings, or or the use of funny versions of chords that you got to wring your hands in order to try to wrench, grab some weird thing. They just don't.
Yeah, and I always think I really think his big abilities was the melodies and lyric ideas, and I think he worked the same way with Bon Jovi and those guys.
I see.
So.
Well, I got to tell you, Bruce, when you were in Kiss, that to me was talent-wise. Look, I was an Eric Singer fan when he was in Badlands. I think he's a phenomenal drummer, and when he got in Kiss, I really thought, well, how's that going to work? It just seemed like he was such a different drummer than anything they've had up to that point, but. Then I heard Revenge, and I kind of got it, how he sat in there. I mean, you really got to play with Kiss at their pinnacle, I think, as far as talent and cohesiveness and rock hard.
Right. Well, thank you.
Well, I'm a 70s fan too, but Peter Criss is a lot different than Eric Singer. The drive that you can get from a drummer, as you know, is just huge. And Paul's voice.
Eric was another talented guy who had a certain style and everything that was able to fit into the band, in the same way that, Eric Carr was different from Peter, and I was different from, Mark St. John or Vinny or Ace, right. but it really kind of worked. And, you gotta admit, when it happens and it's working, it's always like very, very exciting for everybody because, keeping Gene and Paul there, I think, that's the meat and potatoes of the band. And then, well, what are you surrounding it with? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And they've been able to remain, of course, very successful. Tommy does a fine job, especially, kind of in that spaceman role, and that's what they want from him. So, it's really, it's a real testament to the band and Gene and Paul's ability to keep. Believe me, I was a little shocked when I saw Axl Rose go to AC/DC, but apparently I don't think people were walking out of the concert, and Axl seems pretty comfortable.
No,
very bizarre.
I heard some of it, and I was shocked that I didn't hate it. Yeah, I was just like, what?
It's one of them things. Like I said before, at first I was turned off by it, but then I realized that you almost have to go see it so that you can tell your buddies when you're 75 years old sitting in the old folks' home, you can say, I saw it. Well, you guys were complaining, getting your money back. I was there.
I was there, man.
Yeah, so I think he does a fine job at it.
I think so too. I was shocked because I'm not that big a fan of Guns N' Roses. I was not that big a fan of his work with Guns N' Roses, but it kind of worked. Him doing the Brian Johnson and Bon Scott stuff, it fit right in,
Well,
I was even threatening to record with him or something.
No.
It's pretty wild.
Oh my God!
I can't imagine, but whatever.
But to continue on the subject of that lineup of Kiss, and it also seemed to me that Paul's voice was in its prime as well. I mean, the way he was singing then was so strong. Did you kind of sense that too? That he was just kind of on at that point?
There's no doubt that I was very, very fortunate that. Especially the 80s and part of into the 90s. I mean, look at Unplugged, how well the band sounded and how well Paul was kicking ass on that. I don't know. It's just, it's really, that's what I do love about the, watching the stuff on YouTube and seeing what people share. It's really remarkable what I see because, oh, wow, I hadn't seen that. Somebody will pull something off of Animalize, or somebody will share a video that I forgot about. Maybe it was on one of the compilations that came out, maybe not. But it's always really, really remarkable to be kind of me discovering my past, too, and seeing all the stuff, So
I have one Kiss nerd question because one of my best friends had to know. He wants to know, it's in the Kiss Alive Forever book where it says that you and Mark St. John played in the same night and split the night. Is that true or false? Well,
it's kind of interesting that I seem to be the only one that kind of remembers what the heck happened, okay? But they, I already had the gig. I went off to Europe, and I wound up, being the guitar player, but just the temporary guitarist, okay? And then the next thing you know, I'm ready to start the American tour, and now, for whatever reason, contractually or just because they realized that it would be important to let Mark see what he can do. He was the guitarist to Kiss. He was on the album, Animalize, and he did the videos. Excuse me. He came on tour with us, and I literally would warm up with him sometimes backstage. So, in other words, maybe the first week of that tour, he just got to see what we were doing, because you got to remember I was in Europe for 6 weeks touring, and then what I seem to remember was one night they let him start a show or end a show. I'm not sure, but only play half the show up to the drum solo. The next night, do the other part of the show. Okay. And then another night, they let him do the entire show. Okay. So you see how that would kind of fit in with what you're saying.
Okay.
And quite honestly, it was when he, did the entire show. That's when they sent him home. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Was he having hand problems? Is that what was happening?
No, his hand was fine then.
Okay.
The issue was more about he was playing well, but you just got to remember, I had the, like I like to say, I had the home team advantage, you know, and they were, Gene and Paul were comfortable with me, and I had the moves down and the sound right. You know,
they just had a guy they preferred.
Yeah. And I think that Mark tried too hard, and you know, it was weird. I mean, I didn't do anything to make it harder for him, but of course I wanted the gig, but I knew whatever was going to happen was going to happen.
Right.
You know, and in the end, it was pretty obvious that I was the right guy for the job, and I kind of earned it that way. Yeah. And it's a very unusual story when you think about it.
That would be awkward. That just
it was awkward, and that's why I kept it kind of, all right, let's jam. You know, I did respect the guy. I mean, I didn't think he was right for Kiss, and I know they hired him because he was very unique and a hot shot, but I also know that Kiss needed a guitarist that was more based in that kind of British blues, Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix, and not, he was into a lot of the kind of shreddy, some people like Alan Holdsworth and all that, and he can play that stuff that I couldn't play, but, you know, then again, Kiss is much more meat and potatoes.
That's what I'm saying, man. 4/4 pays the bills.
Exactly. That's what pays or what sells the records and fills the arenas. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. Yep, I get you. You know.
When you did finally get into the band, Bruce, can you remember? I mean, obviously things are going to change for you financially, and I'm not going to go into that. Other than, do you remember the first thing that you purchased as soon as you knew that you had, you know, a pretty good job?
The first thing that I purchased, well, you got to remember, I mean, I was even excited to think that now I'm working with guitar companies and they'll give me stuff. And, you know, certainly when we were on tour, I mean, the first year was a little learning curve for me, you know what I mean? But by the time probably Asylum, you know, I didn't really get that aggressive about the collection, and I certainly was still just trying to, I walked into the band not being you know, anyone that owned a home or anything really, so I was still kind of young with that way. So I think it was more later on that I started to acquire things or you know, feel more rock star, but I probably getting a really cool leather jacket or something like that would have been like, ooh, this is like, I'm a rock star. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But, you know, you had to play the role, but then again, in some ways, you know, Kiss took care of when we were going to do a photo shoot rather, and especially if we were gearing up for, you know, album, you know, press and stuff, we wanted to present an image, and we did. And in those ways, we'd have sometimes a stylist help us get a shop, you know, make things for us. You get what I'm saying? So I didn't have to exactly do that. You know?
I like that your first thought was, what gear did I buy? Because, I mean, that would have been my first thought. I'm too stupid to, like, buy houses or stock.
I get you.
You bought stock.
I never was extravagant.
Yeah.
I really wasn't extravagant. But later on, I started to acquire things on occasion. But I think I was really more excited about, like, oh, I'm working with ESP. They're giving me an ESP. Ooh, this is cool. You know, and stuff like that.
You got early.
But I started eventually getting into the vintage guitars again and trying to get some deals. I remember during a Hot in the Shade tour, a friend of mine that I'm still close with from St. Louis, this guy Ed Seelig wound up selling me like a 1960 355, and I still own it. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
And that would have been extravagant. That I actually, I mean, it's kind of funny. It was only a little over, maybe it was like $2,400 or something like that. But you know, and it's like 10, 15. Some years those guitars were valued $20,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But back then that was a lot of money for me. You know, to spend a couple of grand on a guitar.
That's nothing to sneeze at. That's nothing to sneeze at. But I mean, so you've got some pre-CBS Fender gear. Do you got some? Do you got any Tweed amps? Any
actually, you know, it's funny you mentioned Tweed amps. I remember buying one, and actually then I had a birthday party that was pretty fun. That Gene wound up giving me a pretty cool Rickenbacker 12-string, and then Paul actually wound up getting me like a Fender Harvard, you know, like a 59 or something. So I got to dig out that stuff and make sure it works.
Dude.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, the caps are probably sitting there shitting the bed, man. You need to fire them up.
I know they're just not that accessible because, and like we were talking about earlier, where, you guys were saying like, I can't get a sound out of that amp. Those things are only for certain things, and
That's
you can't necessarily just stick it in your living room and make it rock unless you want to do a certain thing.
Yeah.
But let's not go down the gear route. But I have plenty of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, man.
I got plenty of it.
Obviously, the tours that Kiss was doing, they were what I'd consider the big show. That's the big cog of the machine. What was that life like for you? I mean, what was your daily routine like when you were on a big tour like that?
Really, you just want to pace yourself and stay healthy. And, I didn't party a lot, I'll be honest. The version of Kiss I was in was certainly much more, you can be a rock star, but I was never a drinker or drug guy. So it was I did enjoy meeting the fans after the show sometimes. And when I was a single guy, it was fun to flirt with girls or have some fun. But it was really I knew that I wasn't going to find love that way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
In fact, my wife did meet me at a meet and greet back in in the asylum era, which was pretty ironic.
Wow.
But it was she remembers more about talking to Eric Carr than me and even Paul. But which was why it was very ironic to have Paul and Gene and all at the wedding. But it was really about. I never knew how long it was going to go. So for me, it was really, I wanted to play as good as I could. And like I said, the band had huge success before I joined. So they were pretty much used to being, rock stars and everything. And for me, it was all new. Everything was new. So I didn't go crazy. I could see why bands like Guns N' Roses that practically come out of the gutter of Hollywood, and that they go crazy when they take over the world. I get it. I'm not saying I would have if I was one of those guys, even though I don't think I could have lived in one room in some seedy Hollywood place to be part of that band. You know what I mean? It just was not really my thing. But you get what I'm saying. I really did fit what was going on in Kiss when I joined.
You always had one foot in reality at all times.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I knew it could end at any time. Yeah, I walked into a band that I didn't create, but still is huge, and I'm getting adoration from fans, but I had big shoes to fill. So, it was a job, but it was a fun job. And I know some people think, you must have been making millions. I was working, it's more like working at a company. I didn't own the company, you know what I'm saying? So, I was just I was pretty low key and humble about everything. And I'm glad I was, and I remained that way.
Cool. Very cool. Well, I guess for me, it's that, golden carrot that everybody in my position that's always tried, or wanted to be a rock star in their life. It's that golden carrot that you've caught seemingly. And I guess we all wonder what that golden carrot really is. I mean, what does it feel like to walk into a room and that everybody, at least a majority of the people, are going to recognize you and want to, I don't know, be a part of you or something, you know what I mean? That feeling of that, does that get old, and how long, does it take a while?
You're asking something, that definitely, it's all perception, really. You got to remember, if I'm touring with Kiss, back in the day, Gene and Paul were so famous, in other words, it's like when you go see a baseball team or something, and they have a couple of superstar guys that were the reason why they won the World Series the year before, and those guys get a lot of attention, and then the other players, you admire them and you're happy to meet anybody on the team, but because Gene and Paul were just such big stars from all the years of their success, it was never overbearing for me. Someone would be happy and lucky if they, approached me and I responded and spoke to them, if you feel what I mean. But But honestly, because of that role of me not being an original guy, and I didn't create the band, I'm just a guitarist, you'd be surprised. Yeah, there was still an ego gratification of being recognized and people wanting your autograph or photo, but I always felt like, well, this could go away very quickly, A. B, I do my job, but I didn't create this thing called KISS. Yeah. So you get what I mean? When you put it all in perspective, it wasn't that complicated, you know. I mean, and believe me, my mature take on it was the best one, because if I would have, you know, tried to act like I was cooler than them, that wouldn't have gone over very well. Let's put it that way. You know,
right? Was there ever a time where maybe, because you worked for Paul and Gene essentially, correct?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, that's how it worked. Were you ever kind of like in the doghouse with them for anything? And, you know, were they easy to upset, or did you just kind of stay away from them as much as you can, just that way?
I didn't really cause much drama. I was always generally very grateful to have the gig, because I know, like, you know, as much as rock and roll was a little healthier then than it is now in the sense of bands, you know, rock bands touring and selling records, but still, I knew that this was an amazing opportunity. There's no reason for me to get crazy with anything. I mean, on occasion, if I thought something was really not right or something, I did have the guts at times to bring it up or try to challenge them. But in general, I was happy to be there, and I did my job, you know. And Eric Carr actually being before me and experiencing the end of the makeup era and a lot more than me, he at times did feel very much, you know, kind of like frustrated or not important enough. They didn't rely on him. They didn't let him do as much, and that was something that he needed to deal with. But as much as I was sympathetic to that, I also knew that, you know how many drummers would like your job, man?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was very realistic about that as well.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can see how interpersonally, I mean, kind of aside from the business aspect of it, but in a way, because of the business aspect of it, that it would be a really difficult and strange thing if you were to be let into that inner circle that existed between those two men, because really it was their show, and I'd probably respond the same way that you did, which is really to try to help them when they wanted help or needed help, but then really just try to stay out of their way, to be a benefit as much as you could, but not, you know, the thorn in their side, you know.
Funny how you mentioned that, stay out of their way. One of the hardest things to do, and it only came up, you know, rarely, but when it came up, it was like, oh no, you know, if one of them had a strong opinion about something, and the other one, they used to rule by compromise, and that's okay. That's life, you know, and I got that. But the other one didn't agree. You know, what do you think, Bruce? I'd be like,
don't bring me into this, man.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean,
in a way, are you paying me to think now? Is that what's happening?
Well, no, it's not. I'd like to think, but you're screwed no matter who you know.
Does this dress make me look fat?
You know, so sometimes I could answer with that, with something, you know, my instinct says I prefer this, but it's your call.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, that would be the best way to say it.
Totally,
you know?
man, because you don't
want to get involved with that.
Never want to give the impression that you're doing anything that would usurp their authority, you know.
Yeah.
It's their gig. And that's what you're there for, you know.
And that's
why they created it, so I had no issue with them driving the bus, as I say. But
totally.
I certainly was you know, a good team player. I think that's part of my personality anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Am I right in saying that you hold the longest residency in KISS?
No, you're wrong.
I am
wrong.
Eric
Singer does right now.
Oh, well, I mean, a guitar player.
No, I think Tommy's got more years now.
Okay.
You'd have to add it up.
But that, to me,
I'm like that answer.
I'm sorry, but Tommy...
But what about importance of years?
Tommy doesn't really count to me because he's
you can't say that.
Well, no. He counts as a guitar player. He's great. I understand where he stands, but it was Ace, you know, Vinnie Vincent, Mark St. John, Bruce Kulick, and then Ace again.
Well, if you're saying consecutive years, Tommy still may be beating me already. Okay. He's been there, I think, from like, I don't know, when did Ace leave again? 2000 or something?
Right. Like
so it's 2016 now. So he's got 16 years or 15 years, whatever. And I got, 12, just almost 12.
12 years.
So maybe.
Yeah.
So Brian, are you
Speaking
talking about
of time?
Okay,
we got to wrap this up soon because
sorry, man.
I got a family life. My wife is home from work.
I was gonna say, man, that's part of the reason why you've probably been able to stay married all these years is because you understand how to maintain relationships, my friend.
We enjoy simple things like cooking dinner together and relaxing.
That's how you do it, man.
It's the good life.
She's well. Look, I wouldn't know your good buddy there, Mark Wagler, and his family if it wasn't for her. And Iowa people are great, and she's real Midwest, and I really do value spending time with her.
Cool.
Especially when I can be home, because there are plenty of times I got to be the road warrior and travel for
certainly don't let us keep you forever, sir.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so let's wrap it up with a question or two, right, and then I can go have my dinner.
I can just do one for you here. Is there one concert or show that you've played in your career? What one show comes to your head first? What's the show?
It's a really cool question. It's been a lot of highlights, of course, with certainly the KISS years and even other ones, but I being a New Yorker, and I grew up there, and I saw Led Zeppelin at Madison Square Garden. I saw Jimi Hendrix at Madison Square Garden. I would say when KISS played Madison Square Garden, for me, that was like unbelievable. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
To be in the same arena on the same stage, kind of performing there it blew my mind. And then the best kind of like recorded video-ish type live gig type thing that I did, and there were a lot of highlights with KISS in particular, but Unplugged I thought was tremendous, even though it was really my last gig.
Oh, really?
So, yep.
Very cool.
Because then we went in the studio and recorded, but that was, you got to call that a live gig. There were 400 people there watching, while it was being filmed. So.
Sure. So Bruce, I want to. Yeah, well, I wanted to thank you very much for your time because, like I said, this podcast isn't like broadcast all over the world. I mean, we're just Iowa guys that love talking about rock and roll.
I know. I like the good people of Iowa. Yeah. I'm not running for president or anything. It's okay.
Not yet. You say that now.
Yeah.
You say
that now. I don't need to be in any primary or anything. I'm teasing.
Yeah.
What a crazy year with the politics and everything else. But hopefully, make sure I want to plug again that gig that's coming up in Des Moines, which is the other good reason to spend some time with you guys. And Grand Funk's a terrific band. If anyone's got any preconceived notions of it one way or another, all I can do is promise you that will really impress you. You'll have a great time. So everybody out there, come on. And if someone's listening to this and they're not from Iowa, and I have a lot of KISS fans that they don't know what to expect, and they come because they want to see me play guitar, but then they're blown away with the gig and everything. So, and the way the band is and how many songs they actually knew. So.
I'm going to try to come check that out because I am a fan of Grand Funk. I didn't realize.
Oh, you'll love it. Mel's still a great bass player. Don is such a terrific drummer.
Don, a singer too. My goodness, man.
And Max is great, and we have this killer keyboard player who sings great. Come on out to the show.
That's Grand Funk, and they're going to be in Des Moines at the Arts Festival, and that's Saturday, June 25th.
That's it.
Bruce, thank you very much for calling in. We
you
appreciate
guys,
it.
Man. And let me know when this goes live and everything so I can make a mention of it too. Okay?
We're going to edit all your words together so you just
You got it. Yeah,
really
you're going to make me sound like a Chinese guy.
We are going to soundbite your ass. Oh, my God.
I got you.
Have a good dinner, Bruce.
All right, guys. Be well.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Well, coming off of that interview with Bruce, I just got to be honest. I really didn't expect him to be that talkative, and I really got kind of out of my comfort zone a little bit because I didn't want to interrupt him, but he did talk a lot. So my fucking system decided to do like a Windows 10 update right in the middle of it. I have recording software going, and it's the interview that I've been waiting all day to do. And we get it all set up, and we're doing this thing, and all of a sudden the computer shuts off and restarts and starts downloading updates.
Doesn't ask you if you want to download updates. Doesn't. Nope. You might want to consider
done that before.
Going in there and scheduling that shit.
I thought I did. I thought like 3:00 in the morning on Sunday.
Yeah, that's what I thought it would be.
Or never. How about leave me alone?
Yeah, leave me the fuck alone.
But anyway, that happened, so that threw me off my game a little bit too. But he was so easy to talk to, and it seemed like he was having a lot more fun talking about gear, of course, than talking about being the rock star guy.
I kind of had the impression he was going to be that way because really when Mark Wagler was initially talking to us about his interest in coming on the show, one of the things that he mentioned was that he was really into the questions I was asking Mark about the JCM 900, you know, and I thought, oh, Bruce Kulick, man, he's a gear nerd. I think maybe this dude's a gear nerd, you know. But I think tonight's interview really kind of confirmed any suspicions about, you know, what that guy's approach to music and rock and stuff is. He's much more of a bookworm. He's kind of like a nerd like me, which I like.
I'm really happy that he entertained some of the questions that I was asking, because I guess what I was trying to get to, like you said, when we were outside for a second taking a break, you said, I don't think that the questions you're asking, he knows the answers to, because he's not the kind of guy that really was about the rock stardom and that whole side of things.
Yeah.
He just like when we asked him, you know, what's the first thing you bought? He immediately assumed we meant gear.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, not a house.
I was thinking
not
Corvette.
A Camaro. Yeah, exactly. A Harley. I bought a Harley. But then he did mention a cool leather jacket.
Right.
But you know, his first thought would be tools, you know, and that's kind of the hallmark of a nerd, you know. We think that the most powerful thing that we can get with our money is tools, not more money or stuff of conspicuous consumption.
What was really cool about it, I guess, was how when I said he had one foot in reality all the time, and I guess that puts you in a good position because he got to go through that experience.
Yeah.
Clear-headed.
Yeah.
Instead of going from, you know, you're 20 years old and all of a sudden you're a double platinum. You never even had a chance to be a person yet. So now everybody's kissing your ass and all the doors are open for you, and you don't know how to adapt to that other than to think, well, I deserve this. This is who I am now. I think that Bruce knew that was all stuff that was just like fringe on the opportunity to be in the business.
That's what I'm saying, is that he realized pretty early on that if he did start going off the deep end, if he was the sort of dude that wanted to even go down that road, he'd be losing his job immediately.
Yeah, I think that's why they kept him around so long.
Absolutely.
He's a great guitar player, because I've always said, and if the Kiss fans understand this, I've always thought that Bruce Kulick really fit right in. You don't know much about Kiss guitar players.
I really don't.
There was Ace Frehley, and then there was a couple guys after him, like Vinnie Vincent, that was complete shred. I mean, they were trying to compete with that 80s shred at one point, you know.
But they were shredders? Like, because I've gone back and listened to those albums, and
Vinnie Vincent was definitely a shredder.
Because I listened to those albums, and I didn't get the vibe of shred from that stuff. It still seemed to me that these
real notey and real,
But they was still like blues based, you know what I mean? It never really like...
Well, either way, it was a stark difference to Ace Frehley.
Well, you're right about that.
So you went from this real seasoned kind of style, old school blues type stuff. Then you go to this new 80s kind of whammy bar stuff.
Yeah, right.
And I thought that Bruce really kind of encapsulated all them styles and kind of put them together, because he didn't go one way too much or another way too much. Well, and there's a few questions I wanted to ask him that I didn't get to, because, you know, the conversation just went where it went, and I didn't want to interrupt him, but... you know, I wanted to ask him if he had freedom when he came into Kiss, if he had freedom to do solos the way he wanted to, or if Kiss was kind of telling him how they wanted it. And another thing too is live, he never did Ace Frehley's solos, which were signature solos that all the Kiss fans were waiting to hear. You know, did he have the freedom did they say, oh, we don't want you to play his solos, just play what you want?
See, my guess would be that it would be something like this. And I don't know, Bruce, if you watch this episode, you can tell me I'm insane. But based on kind of what the interpersonal dynamic that it sounded like he was describing, that it was probably something like this. They would do their best to give him the impression that he had freedom, but that he had better dare not cross the line and do something that was too outrageous, because they had a rep to protect. You know what I mean? That it was far better the idea of freedom than actual freedom. You know that, and my guess is that a guy like Bruce with that kind of attitude that he has, he'd be all right with that. He could work with that. He would know that the best work he could do for them would be as, and I don't mean this in any kind of demeaning or any kind of talk down kind of way, but as a servant, you know what I mean? As a servant, as a person who's there to serve up his best attempts at meeting the needs of the authorities, essentially, and that then to not be on any kind of ego trip about it, at least apparent to the authorities, about what things he brought that would or would not be accepted by them, and that he would do his best to try to decipher their code, whatever it was. And my guess is, now, because there was a question I wanted to ask him too, which was, did you ever figure out how to crack the code of their sense of style or quality? Because when you're a person that's trying to write something that's acceptable to someone else, as you develop your relationship with them, you hope that you understand their drives and desires well enough that you can begin to sort of predict what it is that they're going to like and what it is that they're not going to like. And some people are so driven by a sense of novelty, like they're always after the new thing and they're always watching what's happening around them and always trying to spot trends just as they're getting started, that from the business perspective, the drives and desires of guys like Gene and Paul may have made it so that the riff that would have been good to bring last week is not going to be a good riff to bring this week, and that you might be a fucking genius last week and then considered to be developmentally disabled the next, so.
Well, to be in any position to just bring in riffs,
yeah,
I would have loved that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I wonder what Paul's going to do with this. Here's this riff, because coming up with riffs,
nothing, because your riff sucks.
Well, to me, I think that they would be too busy, because sometimes the best riff is just like, a C to G to a D in the right syncopation, and then all of a sudden that that stirs up something that somebody could write. Sure. Because obviously, if you're just riffing, they end up sounding like you're writing a Metallica song, and then they, you almost have to get with them in the room and start just strumming out stuff and seeing what happens. And that's what I was asking them about Desmond Child. How did that process work?
My guess is that they needed a melodist. I think they knew. And this is all just speculation. It's just my speculation. But my guess is that from the business perspective, they already knew or had some idea on any given day what kind of rhythm they thought was going to be the rhythm that was going to drive the, pussy juice or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'd love to talk to Desmond Child. Go to Ozzy. Wikipedia and look at everything that this guy's written.
Shit with Ozzy.
It's amazing. Bruce Kulick calling me is very strange, because before we did this interview, there was a lot of correspondence back and forth between him and I knew that he had said, I'll give you this much time, or he said, I'd do your podcast.
Cool.
And I was very cool about that. And then I just responded, when, just give me a date. And it took a while to figure out a date. We finally got one. But when we were trying to find out if it would work, that he called from his office phone, which is a blocked number.
Right.
Okay. And which is fine and dandy, but my phone, most cell phones will block that stuff.
Oh, really?
And it won't get through.
Oh.
So we had to test to see if my phone would block it or not. And I remember I was at Menards picking out PVC connectors, okay?
Right.
And my phone rings, and he just emailed me and said, I'm going to call in 2 minutes.
Right.
And I'm going around my day waiting for Bruce Kulick to call me. And, it's just going to be hey, it works. Okay, thanks. But, yeah, I'm standing there picking out PVC stuff, and then my phone rings, and I'm like, unavailable, okay. And I said, hey, gotcha. That's all I said was, gotcha. And he goes, hey, all right, it works, something like that. And all right, bye, Bruce. All right, see ya. Yep. And then my coworker was with me, and I was like, that was Bruce Kulick. And then he goes, no, it wasn't. And I said, that was Bruce Kulick.
Yeah.
And I said, I was at Menards when Bruce Kulick called me.
Right.
Where were you?
When
Bruce Kulick called you?
Right.
It'll always be a memory to me, because I was like, here I am at Menards, and Bruce Kulick called my phone. That was pretty neat. I thought it was cool.
That is
for a nerd like me, that's
for sure, man.
That's pretty awesome. And I really appreciate him giving us the time, because he does this stuff a lot. I've heard a lot of interviews from him. He's very active in that sense. He'll give you the time of day. A lot of people won't even respond to you. So.
I think at this point in the game, I mean, I don't see how anyone at this point in the game can really make it without getting down in the trenches of marketing and promotion. I don't know how. I mean, because the people that you hire to do your marketing promotion, they're just going to be using the same tools that you have at your fingertips in order to do it, which is Facebook and Twitter, and you know what I mean?
Sure.
Everybody's got the same way of going about promoting and sharing and spreading their messages.
I'm going to try to end this bitch.
All right.
But, thank you to everybody that, sent me messages today. And I know that people were excited that I was doing this interview. And I know I was nervous about it, to be honest with you. I haven't, obviously Bruce Kulick's the most famous person that I've talked to on MDR. The opportunity to talk to Bruce was really cool to me. I hope that everybody, enjoyed the podcast. I was nervous. Yeah. It's a little different for me, but I hope that they caught the vibe that I was not trying to just say, hey, what was it like to work with Paul Stanley?
Yeah, right.
Or what was it like to, have Gene Simmons there?
Did you ever get laid a lot, man?
I really, really thought about it. Like I said in the opening, I really thought about it after everybody came at me about like, man, you gotta ask this about Kiss, ask this about Kiss. Have your dates right. Did this really happen on this date? And I'm like, it started to feel like a Trekkie convention.
Yeah.
I don't think that is interesting is talking to a human that got to get on that big ride.
Yeah.
That we never got on, and just kind of see what the ups and downs of it were,
Right.
And I really appreciate that he went on that ride with us. He didn't seem to get turned off by the fact that I might get a little personal.
Yeah.
And he also deferred some of the stuff that I asked him.
Well, and that's, I think though, I still think it stands that part of it is that he wasn't quite on the same ride as a lot of them dudes. He was a different man than the rest of them, and he was in a different situation artistically and socially than the rest of them.
But from the perspective of this 20-year-old kid that was listening to that era,
he was just the same as anybody. Yeah,
he was in Kiss.
Yeah, he was in Kiss. That
means he's the king of the world, right? In my world,
right.
And I was just talking to my buddy about this. Kiss went through an era where there were half arenas. They were maybe weren't selling places out, and you would go in there and the band's going, shit, man, we're losing our grip. And I'm thinking, whoever's not here, they're just stupid.
It's dawning
they're
on me.
Missing out on something here.
Okay, so how do I know who Bruce Kulick is? I can tell you exactly how, because I was not a fan of Kiss during that time. I didn't really know what was going on with it. I was on the outside looking in. A good friend of mine who I haven't reached out to in a while, so maybe I will, because I'm remembering it now. Good friend of mine, a woman by the name of Lisa Solbrig, had on the inside of her locker, as her cute boy picture, a ripped out page from, Guitar for the Practicing Musician or Kerrang or Rip or whatever, Metal Edge magazine or whatever. And it was an ad. It was a BC Rich ad, I believe,
Paul Stanley?
with Bruce Kulick. And it was just him, and he was doing some kind of whatever fucking pose, and you saw the big BC Rich fucking pointy headstock,
Yeah.
And that's how I know who Bruce Kulick is. Yep.
Okay.
And that dude had on some aqua nets.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, dude.
And some rouge, probably.
Yeah, a little bit of rouge.
And you would, too, if you'd been in Kiss.
Dude, I would have fucking put aqua net on my pubes. That shit would have been froed out.
You sit here all the time with your smug-ass Travis Williams attitude about stuff.
Oh, shit.
If you were in Kiss, if they called you tomorrow and said, look,
all right, here's the deal, Travis Williams. What I'm going to need you to do is blues box it every night, and we're going to pay you $100,000 a year. What do you think? All you got to do
and you're going to see the world.
All you got to do is everything we say. I'd be like,
you can do it your own way as long as it's done just how I say.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, episode 58 of Minor Disturbance Radio. Thank you very much for being a part of this. That was a fun ride for me. That was a first for me to talk to somebody that's been in Kiss, and thanks, Bruce, for giving me the time.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I think it was just cool for me to meet another fellow guitar nerd, music snob.
Right. Lots of fun, man. Hater. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Oh, shit. I said